this will be an interesting talk today. In the past, most of my talks have been pretty structured and kind of follow a specific slide format. And I told myself we were going to try something a little different today and see what we could get done without any slides and just kind of hack on some devices. And so I've got a couple of devices. I've got a couple of tools that I typically use, and I just kind of want to walk through those and give people some information on hopefully help people, give them some new tools, let them see what can be done pretty easily, and kind of a little bit maybe of how wild west it is. So with that, let's get started. Let's play around. So the first device that I want to look at real quick, and I don't know, maybe we'll spend a bunch of time with this device, but there is this is a super cheap what's called a Wise Cam, cameras are a big thing with IoT security. They're on the internet. They stream, sometimes people's bedrooms and sometimes people's, like private lives, and they don't even realize that these things are on the internet and maybe hackable. And so I had one of these lying around. I decided I did a little work ahead of time to kind of look through what's available. And yeah, I think we're going to be, somewhat successful playing around with this thing. So these guys, yeah, I mean, they're just a little camera. You can, like many small little devices, it turns out that this guy runs Linux. And if we, I think we're just going to play around here a little bit and see if we can figure out what we can get this little guy to do. So like this guy is on right now. Let's, so what I did, and here I'm going to share my screen now, and feel free to, and by the way, we got a fairly small crowd today, so feel free to just toss stuff in the chat if you got any questions or got anything you want me to go over, any leads or ideas on what to do here. But there's a lot of things that we can hit here, so feel free to just guide me a little bit here. But yeah, so these guys are just little webcams. They got an app that you can hook up to. Let's see if I can pull that up. Let's see. And if I register this guy, I think he's turned on. So let's see, let's add a new device. Let's add a Wise Cam. And here, let me share my, I need another different cable here. Here we go. You can see what's going on here. No, that's not gonna work. Oh yeah. All right, so now you can see my phone here. So I've got a little app here that allows you to pick this cam. So plug it into a power outlet, flash yellow, pull the base away, press setup under the camera. Yep, there's the setup button. Interesting. You gotta get it to power on first. Let me show, let's see, we can still talk about this a little bit, but why doesn't that guy want to power on? Try one more USB cable and then we'll just, I guess, have to move on. This guy was working. Let me show you. I don't know. I guess that guy's not powering up all of a sudden. That's neat. Oh, you know what? That's funny. If I grab the one cable I shouldn't have, a USB cable that has the power disconnected. There we go. Try one more time. That's less exciting than I thought it would be. Let's we'll have to try something a little different here. So we'll cancel. It's making noises like it's doing something interesting. Huh. Oh yeah. And now it's blinking. Huh. Oh, there we go. Okay. So now he's ready to connect. Allow location. So this is an interesting place. So here, I'll pop this up again so you guys can see. So right off the bat, you know, we've got allow your location. Okay. So now selecting my network, that's my network. And then they've got this QR code that it looks for. So this is an interesting place where, of course, you could imagine where we won't explore that, but that's an interesting place for like, what could your QR code do that would be, you know, kind of help you into the system. Connecting, this could take a minute.
Setup completed.
Yeah, so now it's in. Setup's completed. Alrighty. So yeah, so I don't know what we'll call it, just office cam. Finish up. All right, whatever. Maybe later. Okay, so now we're gonna have the office cam live stream. Here we go. There I am, showing off all our stuff. All right, so it wants to do an upgrade. I don't want to do an upgrade yet. So one of the big you know, opportunities sometimes with these devices is to get into them is to use existing vulnerabilities. So it'd be interesting to see. Let's see, device info. We are on a WiseCam that's running 495.111. So we'll keep that in our back of our heads. And now one interesting thing here is our IP address, 1.79. So one of the tools that we can use to kind of just poke at this thing a little bit is to use Nmap. And you may not be familiar with Nmap. Nmap is a tool that will just do a port scan on it. And it will tell us if there's anything open on this device, anything that we could play around with probe. 1.79. Oops, that's 80. So let's see what's on. 1,000 ports on 1.79 is closed. And then so it doesn't have anything open up in the first kind of set of ports, kind of common ports. So we need to the next thing that you can do is use some advanced options in Nmap to kind of check to check and see if some other ports are open. So if we, yeah, -A, capital A, I think is the one. Is that right? There's always a lot of Googling. There will be Googling involved in this episode here. Let's see. I believe it's just capital A. Like any good documentation, it's very opaque. Enable OS detection, version detection. Okay, that is a little different. Where is the and then ports, port ranges. Yeah, so we can do port 1 through, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. So we can say, give us all that stuff and do ports 1 through 65535, which is the top, the highest port you can use. So that'll scan the whole thing on every single port. Host seems down. Oh, that's 1.80. Oops, 79. Let's see what we can find here. I'm just going to shut this down now because we don't need this. 495.111. So the other thing, if I'm attacking this thing, I'm going to do wise cam. Yeah, root passer. You can see I was kind of playing around with that. Definitely. Here's, like, there's a guy, wise hacks I discovered, right? We'll get there. Wise CVEs. So if you're not familiar with CVEs, they're security vulnerabilities in a particular, and this is spelled a little differently, so this might not be quite the right thing. No, this isn't quite the right thing. WiseCam V2 firmware, old kernel, dirty code, security. Yeah, right, exactly. Here's somebody in April. I didn't even find this one. Is there a plan to fix this? Yeah. So interesting enough. So service detection report, all 65535 scan ports are closed. So actually that's pretty good. Good for them. You know, they're not taking any inbound traffic. So that's good. So no obvious, the only other obvious thing on this camera that could be an avenue to get into it is there's an SD card slot, and that is, and actually there's a USB connector as well, like a host connector, which is kind of an interesting thing too. So you know, with that SD card, and especially knowing that a lot of these cameras run Linux, that's very interesting for a lot of reasons. So the next thing we can kind of do is, that I typically do, is check out firmware update and look for a zip file. A lot of these guys have firmware updates, right? And hey, here we go, WiseCam. You know, we have a V2, and there's the firmware zip, right? And here's a 32 gig. You know, they basically walk you through how to update the firmware. Well, I want to learn a little bit more about what's going on inside this system. And yeah, and here's a way to flash your camera into a webcam is really what this one's about, to turn it into a webcam instead of having it as a tethered webcam rather than an internet connected webcam. Let's yeah, flashing your WiseCam pan firmware. Let's see, beta. Let's go look at, they've got download specific firmware. Yeah. So we said we are on 495.111. Here's some older stuff too. It's kind of funny that it's labeled demo as well, but okay. So let's see, let's go grab something old. So we'll grab this zip file. Once it connects here. You know, and who knows if we can trust that source. WiseCam 49242 zip. Let's see if that'll get us released to the public. Wise community 49 changes include. Yeah, okay. So there's a lot of people complaining. Where's the download? Doesn't have a download link. Community. So we need to find the download link. Because another attack vector would be to try to downgrade this thing to something that does have some vulnerabilities. A lot of times that's an easy way to go too. You can revert your firmware. Ah, flashing, there we go. Oh, interesting. And that page no longer exists. Huh, where is the download link? Let me pop open this just to make sure I'm not missing it. Let's see, zip, download. Firmware. Any firmware for the V2 before July 2020. Oh, interesting. Yeah. Older versions are being, because they're incompatible with newer WISE cams, would break a newer cam if applied. Oh yeah, there you go. So they actually did, so there's where like having some older firmware is definitely valuable. Let's see though. So I don't know if we're gonna be able to revert it then, but because where is there a revert? Where? Advanced settings, I don't see it there. Yeah, well, let's just see if we can get the firmware download somewhere. Download to firmware download. Release notes and firmware. Here we go. Hopefully this is it. WiseCam B2 firmware. Here we go. So yeah, all of these are removed apparently. We're on this older one from March. So 5.115. Let's see if we can grab this. Yeah, there we go. Now we've got a zip file. We're called this demo bin.zip. All right, so we can download it. And now there's some fun stuff that we can kind of play with to kind of learn a little bit more about the system. So we've got here, I'm just going to remove some of the old stuff that I was doing while I was playing with this. Okay. I'm going to remove V2 webcam, that's some other stuff. We'll keep that around for a second. Webcam firmware. There's, all right. Okay. I've got a tool called hash identifier that can help us out a little bit too. So anyway, we've got 495.115 bin zip. All right. So if we, I'm going to make a directory fork because it zip bombed me last time. And unzip that zip file. All right, so now we've got a bin file. What the heck can we do with that? There's a really cool tool called binwalk that can tell us a lot about this bin file, especially when it's a Linux bin file. And so you'll see, like, you know, no matter kind of how they compressed it, how they encrypted it, this thing can kind of searches for magic signatures throughout the bin file. You can see right away, okay, we got a UImage header, so we know we're running Linux, right? We've got 2 of them, and gosh, now we even know what version of Linux we're running, 3.10.14. Okay, that's fairly old, especially for an image that's being distributed in 2020. 3.10.14, gosh, 3.10.14 release date. Security vulnerabilities, and you can see that you can very easily look this up. Date October 2013. So this is using a 7-year-old kernel, and this is a device that, you know, this is a firmware image from a month ago that was released for this webcam, and these are $20 on Amazon. So easy to get to, kind of interesting, right? So, and then here's the list of security vulnerabilities, like laid out for us on the 3.10.14 kernel, right? Now, some of these will definitely depend on whether a particular service is enabled or not, but you can see they're even scored. And if we just go look for something that's like, you know, pretty, out of bounds access exists and P stream timeout event, and this would require us to be using a wireless Atheros 6KL driver. I don't know if we are, but let's find out if we are, right? So out of all of this, we can see that there's, we know what version of Linux we have. Now we got a stack of CVEs that we could, start to look for attacks for. Here's a 10, which is the highest rating, like the worst type of CVE. Use after free. Oh yeah, well this one is probably not applicable. So you do have to kind of sort through these to figure out what's going to work for us. We've also got access to their SquashFS file system. There's 2 different file systems listed here, right? And so we can extract those and look through them, even run stuff locally. We know that they're running on a MIPS processor at this point because we can see that the CPU is marked as MIPS. So we got a lot of information already. And then a bunch of assets, it looks like. Zip compressed data, file system little endian, just a bunch of compressed data. So if I think it's E does the auto extract. Oh, this is the entropy. So this is the other thing that's interesting. You can see that, if things are compressed, they'll have high levels of entropy, but you can see that this is a fairly compressed image, so all that means at this point is that it's been compressed pretty heavily, and that's expected. We've got a lot of compressed data, compressed everything. Let's see, what is because we want to just extract everything. There we go, dash lowercase e. Yeah, so if we do lowercase e, this will walk through those things, and I had to install a couple of dependencies here ahead of time, but now we're walking through all of these pieces of the image and extracting them to the hard drive. And pretty soon we'll have access to some really interesting stuff. Obviously there's a lot of pieces here. All right, so now we've got this demo extracted. Now we've got a ton of stuff that's really interesting, right? We've got some of these FFS root things, which may or may not have interesting content in them, but here we go. This is interesting. What the heck is this, right? Looks like we've got some shared libraries. Looks like we've got, dongle network start, dongle sensor delete, wave files. Could we play with some of these and get it to program them? I don't know. There's a cert in here, although it's almost certainly a public cert. Yeah, but that's certificate authorities. That's basically going to set us up for who its certificate authorities are, prevent man-in-the-middle type of attacks. I don't know if we'd be able to add our own cert there that would allow us to do man-in-the-middle attacks without them knowing. Let's see. This looks like Realtek, RTL 8821, FiReg page. It looks like, yeah, it looks like maybe some information for the RTL 8821. What is that? RTL 88, it sounds really familiar. Single trip 802.11ac. So that's at least the Wi-Fi chip, if not everything. Yeah, Bluetooth, USB controller. So it's got Bluetooth. Wow, interesting. Lots of stuff. So I think our goal should be, can we get SSH access to this thing? Can we get into it from the network? Because it's connected to the internet. Clearly, we were streaming Wi-Fi from it. So let's see what we could do. All right, so we've got all this JFFS stuff, but it looks like largely like support files and stuff. It's not really our root file system. We do have 2 root file systems that got popped out here. We've got a SquashFS root, and then we've got a root 0, which could be that we have like a backup, like a golden image kind of thing that it uses just in case, or like a recovery mode type of thing. But here you can see we've actually got access here to all of SquashFS, or basically the root file system that runs on this. If you're familiar with Linux devices and have played with them, you recognize this. And this is what's running on this camera right now, or that's what would run in this version. As I mentioned before, you know, like so, etc is where all your where all of your configuration files are stored. If you're not familiar with that, we can look at FS tab and we can see what devices they're going to be mounting. Here's media, and that's typically our SD card. So it looks like that should be mounted under media pretty easily. We've also got our shadow file, and that has a root user with an, interestingly enough, old school password. Remember, this is on a 2013 kernel, and most passwords that you'll see nowadays are going to have a $sign format in them. I'm trying to think if I have an example that I can pop up, but if we look up Linux dollar format password for the password file, we'll see the file shadow passwords. I mean, like typically they look like this. They have a $ID, a $salt, and then a $hashed. And you can see that like those numbers that happen after the first $sign identify what hash you're using. And this is fairly secure, especially since you've got salt in there. It's pretty tough to crack these, although there are tools to do it. But yeah, in this case, what we're seeing is that it's not even new enough to have that format. It's got this old school DES format. So that might be something that we can crack and get root access. The problem is going to be that we don't have any ports open on it right now, so we still need to figure out how to get SSH enabled on this device. And so that's where we might start looking at, I mean, we can do really brute force stuff like just grepping all the files for anything with SSH in it, right? Do we have SSH installed on the device? That's kind of the first question, right? Linux RC, and so we are getting some no such files or directories, which probably means that we are running BusyBox. So BusyBox is typically run on a lot of these Linux. So if we look in bin, we see, yeah, so BusyBox is here. So BusyBox, and we can actually go, if we run strings on BusyBox, we can actually probably see, oh, whoops. You can probably see what version it is. Yeah, there it is. So v1.22.1. So now we've got yet another thing that we can go grab on CVE, and let's just for funsies, let's see how old 1.22.1 is. Let's just go BusyBox, yeah, .net. All right, 1.32 was out, so we're at least 10 minor revisions old. If we go to 1.22, this is in December 14, so they haven't updated this in 7 years. So this is running a super old version of 1.22.1 from January 2014. Yep, and we could just skim through all of the, like, I mean, it's basically changes since previous release. Like, I mean, you could probably just run through, if you run through security, well, security warnings, permissions. Yeah. And then the other thing we can do is go look at the CVE list again for BusyBox. And all of a sudden we've got another big list of, yeah, I mean, we're talking about anything from 2016 on is golden. So, any of this code execution, if they're running, tab out a complete feature of the shell does not sanitize file names and results in executing any escape sequence in the terminal. Yeah, so I mean, if we get shell access, we could definitely exploit this to run run something that gives us root. If we have shell and we don't have root. But yeah, BusyBox 122. So we're running, I mean, and honestly, this happens a lot on these older devices is you've just got old stuff running here, and it's easy to kind of zip in. Hold on one second. I've got a call coming in that I need to decline. Alrighty. So let's see, where do we want to go next? We need to find a way to get SSH on here. So did we find SSH on here? SSHD? No, how about Telnet? Since we're so old, are they actually using Telnet? There it is, oh my gosh. So we might need to Telnet into this thing. I even have Telnet installed. I don't. Can I get Telnet this way? While that's installing. Yeah, so I mean, the way BusyBox works, if you haven't run across it yet, is there's all of these programs in here, and you'll see that all of these programs are typical of what you'd install on a embedded or on a Linux device, but it's kind of a pain to compile all of these different source code, you know, there's commands from scratch. So BusyBox basically, these are all symlinks except for BusyBox, and BusyBox basically takes the call and it can figure out which symlink you called it from, and it basically encapsulates all of the functionality for all of these functions, kind of typical Linux functions. So you can run kind of a number of things from the device and just run it using BusyBox. So one of them, let's see, but Telnet is not one of them. So, and this is old enough where I don't think SSH is included. Find, so where did we find Telnet D? Yeah, user SBIN or SBIN. Okay, so if we go in SBIN, yeah, and most of this is pointing to BusyBox too. So yeah, okay, so Telnet D is still pointing to BusyBox too. So we've got a Telnet. All right, so now what we need to find is how do we turn on Telnet? Oftentimes on boot, there'll be an option to you know, it might look through scripts. We'd find those inside etc. Let's see, inside the, is there a init tab is running on here? We already looked at that. Yeah, so for, we're just running, yeah. So let's see, so we do have an initd. There's an RCS, which probably not going to do. This is on shutdown typically. Let's see. mdev is okay. Kernel hot plug. fsroot set global environment. Hello up. Start telnet daemon. So telnet is running. So why didn't nmap find it? That's a good question. Do we have telnet installed yet? Can we telnet? Yeah, connection refused. So it is not accepting telnet at this point. Here's where I might Google real quick. Why is CAM v2 telnet enable? Remote install using telnet install when you have usually enable after you install the older version wise hacks. Yeah. So I wonder if they turned off telnet. Yeah. So let's see, this was updated as often 24 days ago, not that long ago. Installation method emulates the WISE app protocol to push the update to a running camera. You need the following: Linux-like environment with Python 7. Target camera should be on the same network. Target camera should be in working condition. Config Inc. Run remote install. Wants my creds. Once authenticated, it will go through all the WISE cameras under your account, asking each of them. Once confirmed, you'll hear installation begins from the target camera and then installation finish. Okay, so SD card install only works in your cameras running firmware before 4.9.6.156. Hey, guess what? Ours is. Cool. Let me double check that. Do I because we're on 4.9.5. Yep, you'll need an SD card. Prep an SD card with FAT32. Extract the release archive to the root directory. Make a copy of config. Insert. Wait until it says installation finished. Please remove the card. Default root password for WiseCam is well known. To avoid that, customize the password. Log syncing, auto archiving, SD card size estimation. So this is telling me that definitely there's a path through the SD card. Yeah, and what's inside this WISE hex 0401? Let's store that. Let's see what we can get out of that too. This might just tell us what's going on. Because I think what we can see here is, yeah, make sure the USB disk can be used. There's a GPO that needs to be set. Squash FS gets loaded. So there's this, and there's a number of JFFS file systems that get loaded at different locations. Backup K, D, A, and then configs. These are all coming off of the MTD blog, which is basically like an internal flash. Format file system if it's invalid. All right. App and init. That's an interesting piece too. And then run the app init script. What does that look like? It's not system, but let's see. There's nothing in system because it gets loaded as a JFFS. So we might have to sit back here and find, let's see, what was that called? It was called appinit.sh. Okay, so there's the possible places. JFS to root, FS1 init. What does appinit look like in here? Init upgrading. Upgrade, runs upgrade. There's a bunch of drivers that it sometimes runs, but it doesn't because they're commented out here. It runs this TXISP, EXFAT, sample motor, audio, PWM core, the RTL chip, Realtek chip. DHCP is turned off. That's good. And then runs sysmonitor sh. So it doesn't run telnet. Let's see if there's anything that is a hook. Grep. for Telnet D, or we could find Telnet D somewhere. This might take a second. There's quite a bit of data in that bin file. There's some binary files that match. Oh yeah, because it's, here we go, RCS Telnet D, yeah. So that's what we found before. I think Telnet should be running. Why isn't it running? Let's just do the nmap one more time. Telnet typically runs on, actually, let's look at the Telnet config. Where are we going to find that? Well, drop bear is on here too, which is an SSH. Client. Yeah, nobody starts up drop bear. So it's kind of like you have to get in via the SD card to start. Interesting. All right, well, this is where we could also look at popping this guy open and looking at the telnet, or looking to see if we can get a serial port on this guy. Let's see if that's an easy thing to do. How difficult this is going to be. All right. So we already know quite a bit about this guy. Just, I mean, we honestly didn't even need the hardware. We knew fairly quickly that this guy was running Linux. We know what version of Linux he's running. We know some vulnerabilities that we could trace down. We know, here, I need to pull out the power on this guy to pull him apart, I think. There we go. Oh, there's quite a bit of disassembly actually here. Let's see though, can we find, so typically, Linux devices will have a serial port of some kind that runs. You might even be able to track it down if we look at, here, we have those U images, right, that got extracted. Our bin walk of the bin. Image header size, yeah. Easy to view. So what I'm wondering is if we then there's a lot of strings, but not boot. What I'm looking for is something that would show us the boot command, because that also will tell us if there's a command line enabled. Well, that's not fruitful. Let's see. Yeah, I mean, to me, what I'm seeing is there's a lot of different configurations that they're managing here. I think there's a lot of opportunity here for interesting things to happen, but it is going to take us some time to get in. I don't know. Yeah, looking at this camera, the disassembly is something that I'm going to have to look up a little bit because it might require breaking this thing. An antenna I can see on the side of it. Disassembly. Cutting the wise can be too. That doesn't look promising. That looks like. Let's see, wise can be too. Yeah, here's Ingenic. Okay. So how do these guys do it? Yeah, there it is. Okay. Get those screws out. Yep, you popped it open just like I did. Now what's the next step? This is where I'm stuck. Okay, so he pops out the back. Oh yeah, there's some pretty big tabs there. Oh yeah, once you know how to do it. Once you know what you're looking for. There we go. So we got the back off. Now we can kind of see actually right there is the Ingenic chip and the module, and there is a very interesting header on there. So inside of there, I don't know how easy that is to see in there, but there is at the very top on, I guess, my left, possibly your left, there's three kind of circles there. And that absolutely looks like that very well could be a ground, a transmit, and a receive for a serial port connection, which is fairly likely, I'd guess. Let's see if we can pop it open. Get access to a serial console that way. Pop off the Wi-Fi connector, just a little SMA connector. There's some connectors that go over the edge here. Oh, interesting. There's a flex connector that goes underneath. That's a tricky one to get off. Let's see if we can get it out of there. Yeah. This whole module come out maybe. There are some interesting flex connectors in here that will make this a little tricky. Let's see if we can maybe get away without doing that for the purposes of expediency. And let's see if we can just hook up to a serial port here. All right, so I've got a RS-232. You've probably seen these before. They're available on Amazon. And let's try to just do a little mod here. We'll get a couple wires here. Get the soldering iron going. Gotta love the smell of solder. We'll see what we've got. This is gonna be hacky as heck. And that's okay. All right, so I'm just taking some connector wire. I'm just gonna, I'll see if I can just quickly solder them without pulling this thing out. Yeah, that's the kind of thing you're looking for physical access to this thing. Okay, got one, got two, just a little extra solder. All right. Not gonna write home to my mom about this. All right, I got two of them. Let's see about the third one here. Okay, there we go. All right, so we got access to this port. Let's see if this gives us anything interesting. This will be cool. All right, so I'm gonna plug her back in, get it booting again. After I connect this up. Now we kind of got to guess at some things, and I want to pull out my oscilloscope here so that we can, we're not going to blow up anything. See what the signals look like a little bit. All right. So I'm guessing one of these is ground. Let's see. Let's use the ground off the USB here for the oscilloscope. Let's see what's going on here. I've got a multimeter here too that will just pop up. All right, so if this is ground, what's this guy? 3.3 volts we've got on one of them. Okay, that's good news for us because we got a 3.3 volt RS-232. And how about this one? That's 0 volts. This one's 3.3 as well. All right, so my guess is that the orange guy is ground. And let's just see if we can, and these three pins right here that I'm showing on the screen that it would be great to connect up with. Let's see if we are in the right ballpark. Let's see. Wise cam v2 serial console. Yep. And I think he's on the same thing I am. Oh, interesting. He's in a different place. Although this is a different version of the camera. And then he's just printing out a bunch of stuff. So this is, yeah, that's a different version of the camera. That's not the V2. So let's see. This isn't going to hurt anything. Let's see if we can get some. So orange is ground. And then white is our receive. And let's open our serial terminal. That's our serial terminal. Almost always 115.2 if you haven't done this before. Let's see if we see anything on this pin. Hey, look at that. So there we go. There's our serial terminal. It is having some problems, actually. Now let's hook up. So I guessed right on which one was the transmit, which one's the receive. Sometimes you got to flip it. Now let's see if we get a prompt. Oh, look at that. We have a login. Cool. Now what do we want to do with that login? Login is root. Well known. Login incorrect. All right. So now where we're at, let's see, root is another one to try. Root admin. So really where we'd be at now is I've got the hash. I think we're into this thing and it just is going to take a little time because I've got the hash now from this dump of the zip file. And let's see, inside squashfs root, inside of etc, catting the shadow command, like there is the hash. And then we can run a command like hashcat. We have a DES. Unix passwords, that's mode 1500. Mode 1500 and do brute force, I guess. And then just point it at that hash really. Let's see, where is that hash? There we go. And this will crack that password eventually. It'll take more time than we have, but I think we have a login and we could get into this guy and do what we want. Now, of course, this required hardware access, but pretty quickly after this, you can see that we know what we're getting to on the other side. We've already got the full file system here. So then the question becomes like, what can we do with this thing after we get in? Can we find additional vulnerabilities that might be enabled by default or easy to update? So anyway, hopefully you found that was cool. That was just me kind of screwing around, trying to dig into this device, and we got to a prompt. We have the root password. I think really the question is, how long is it going to take to crack the password? And eventually I believe it will. And you know, I think we've got, let's see, we got time estimated. It's thinking a minute, 50 seconds. I don't think it's going to get done quite that fast, but and I bet if we with this password hash crack, there's online, you know, like crack station, we can just pass it hash here. And let's see. Oh no, it doesn't recognize this one. It doesn't do, because this is kind of using old school DES hash. Let's see, DES. Let's see. There we go. So yeah, I don't know. Some of the online hash crackers aren't really set up to to crack something this old. So where's this guy at? Time estimated. Yeah, it's thinking pretty hard here. Trying to zip through. I think it's trying to do 6 digits right now. It's just brute forcing it with 6. You could get like a password dictionary file for Hashcat. Let's see. So if we grabbed like, which one are these guys pointing at? Example dictionary. Yeah, word list. Usually like GitHub password word list for Hashcat. Yeah, passphrase word list, password base. Yeah, there's like a bunch of these out there, and you can grab any one of them really. Yeah, here's password hash. Yeah, cracking in the cloud. You can do it in the cloud. That would go a lot faster. Right now, it's using my, somewhat modern. So now it's moved on to 7. It's decided that there's no 6, that this password is not 6 characters. It's 7, or it's 7 or more. So now it's up to 1 hour 20 minutes. So it's, brute force is going to take a little while on this guy. I bet somebody's already cracked it though, right? Wise v2 cam root password. I've not changed the default password. IP can't talk. iSmart12. Let's try that. Where did serial go? Root iSmart12. Yep, there we go. We're in. So there we go. There's our. We're into this device. We could set up. So now we can check if Telnet D is actually working. Is actually running like we think it should be. PS grep Telnet D. Yeah, and there it is. It's running. Why is Telnet D not actually have a Telnet? Yeah. So I guess, we're pretty much in here. We've got, yeah. It's got a well-known root password. We can hook onto it physically. We can start to get in, and then, this allows us to hack the local device, and then, who knows how far away we are then from some kind of exploit that we'd be able to handle remotely. If you've heard of Shodan, you can go there. It's basically a search engine for devices. Like if you were going to do something nefarious, now don't do that. But if you wanted to, you can basically search for Wise V2 cams, and you can find, well, we just look like cams. Like you can find cameras on the internet. It's unclear if any of these are Wise V2 cams, but like there's just like a zillion IP addresses here that you can, you can realize that this is a problem. Now, again, I wouldn't recommend trying to hack into any of these, obviously. That could be illegal depending on where you live, but it just kind of makes you realize how big of an issue security is on devices. Now I could develop a crack for this device that, yeah, that could be yeah, that we could definitely find an issue with. So I think, yeah, it's kind of crazy that these guys are still, and I mean, like, we didn't even have to do anything really tough, like, developing an exploit for one of the CVEs, but they're also shipping this with 7-year-old, code. So it's lots of opportunity. Yeah, it looks like they're trying to hit time.windows.com a bunch too, and all kinds of other things, but very interesting. All right, well, I got to wrap it up, guys. Thanks so much for attending. Please let me know on survey or email back if you found this useful, found this interesting, would like to dig into this more or do other things. Any topics, would love to keep on doing this and making things valuable for you. So thanks so much. Really appreciate it.